We were already behind schedule when the road turned to gravel. That should have been our sign to turn around, not because anything felt dangerous yet, but because everything suddenly felt slower. The trees grew closer to the road, their branches leaning inward like they were listening. The sunlight filtered through the canopy in broken patches, never fully reaching the ground. Our GPS showed we were close, but the minutes stretched longer than they should have. Each curve in the road felt deliberate, like it was guiding us deeper instead of forward. No one said anything about it, but conversation died anyway. There were 4 of us, friends who had camped together before. We weren't inexperienced. We'd slept in remote areas, hiked unfamiliar trails, handled nights without cell service. This trip was supposed to be simple. One night, one campsite, out early the next morning, nothing extreme. That's what made the feeling so subtle at first. The ranger station appeared suddenly around a bend. It looked older than we expected, smaller, like it hadn't been updated in decades. The paint was faded, the wood warped slightly, and the porch light was already on, even though the sun hadn't set yet. That detail stood out. Porch lights don't come on that early. The ranger was standing outside when we pulled in, not sitting, not walking, just standing near the edge of the lot, facing the road, as if he'd been watching it. He didn't wave, didn't smile. He just waited until we parked and stepped out. "Evening," he said. His voice carried easily in the quiet air. We told him we had a reservation and mentioned our campsite number. He listened carefully, eyes moving between us in a way that felt more like counting than greeting. Then he looked past us, again down the road we'd just come from. "You're cutting it close," he said. We apologized, explaining traffic, the drive, the delay. He nodded, slow and deliberate. "Most people don't come in this late," he said. One of us joked, "Guess we like the quiet." The ranger didn't react. He reached into the station and pulled out a folded paper map. He handed it to us, even though we hadn't asked. "Take Site 14, he said. We told him that wasn't the one on our reservation. He shook his head once. "Doesn't matter," he said. "It's better." That was strange. Campgrounds don't usually move people around without explanation, but something about the way he said it made arguing feel unnecessary. Why's it better? Someone asked. He tapped the map lightly with his finger. "More space," he said. Then, after a pause, "farther in." We thanked him and got back in the car as we started to pull away. He spoke again. "If you need anything," he said, "come back before dark." We stopped before dark. I asked. He hesitated, just long enough to notice. "Station closes early," he said. That was it. No explanation. We drove on. The gravel road narrowed and the forest thickened almost immediately. The sky above fractured into thin slivers between branches. The deeper we went, the less daylight seemed to reach the ground. That's when we started passing campsites, empty ones, fire pits filled with cold ash, tables weathered but untouched, tent pads cleared but unused. No trash, no footprints, no signs anyone had been there recently. This place supposed to be full. Someone said. No one answered. By the time we reached Site 14, the sun was already brushing the treetops. The site was larger than the others, more open to open. The ground was unnaturally clear, like undergrowth had been deliberately kept from growing back. The trees around it stood farther apart, creating a wide circle of visibility, a clearing. We unloaded quickly, Not because we were afraid, because standing still felt wrong. As the sun sank lower, the forest began to change. Not gradually, abruptly. The birds stopped first, then the wind, then everything else. It was like someone had turned the volume down too fast. We noticed it all at once. The silence. Someone laughed nervously and said, "Forests, get quiet." Sometimes another agreed. No one fully believed it. The fire felt too loud when we lit it. Each crackle echoed farther than it should have. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the clearing, touching the edges of the trees and stopping there as if something beyond the firelight was holding them in place. That was when I realized something that made my stomach tighten. We weren't hearing the forest around us. We were hearing only ourselves. Asterisk. We tried to treat the silence like a normal part of camping. That's what people do when something feels wrong but hasn't proven itself dangerous yet. You name reasonable explanations. You laugh softly. You keep your hands busy. You act like you're in control. We cooked dinner faster than we usually would. Not because anyone said we should, because every second we spent standing still felt like a second we were giving away. The fire was the only thing that felt alive in the clearing. It threw orange light across the dirt and the trunks of the nearest trees, and beyond that the forest stayed black and unmoving. I kept expecting to hear a branch creak, or leaves rustle, or insects pulse back into sound. Nothing did. At one point, one of my friends, Jared, stood up to grab something from the car. The moment he moved beyond the strongest part of the firelight, he stopped. "What?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. He tilted his head slightly, listening. "You hear that?" he said finally. We all froze. There was still nothing. Jared frowned and walked back into the light. He looked irritated, as if he'd been interrupted by a thought he couldn't finish. "Never mind," he muttered, but his eyes kept drifting toward the trees. We ate on the bench at the picnic table, passing plates back and forth and trying to talk about normal things. Work, traffic, plans for the next day. Anything that kept us from listening. Too hard, it didn't work. Because even our voices sounded wrong out there to clear. Too exposed, like the forest was holding still too. Catch every word. That's when we noticed we truly were alone. Not just no one. Nearby, alone. Across the campground, there were no other lights. No lantern glow between trees. No distant flashlights. No muffled conversations. No laughter, no music, no doors closing. There should have been something. Even a quiet campground has stray sounds. Someone zipping a tent. Someone locking a car. Someone coughing in the dark. We heard none of it. It felt like we were camping in a place that had been emptied. Not for the season, but for a reason. "Maybe it's closed," one of us said. "It's not," I replied. Then realized I sounded too certain. "We have a reservation." Jared pointed back the way we'd come. Then why would the ranger move us to the farthest site? No one answered. The sky darkened quickly after that, faster than it should have. Not because the sun set, because the canopy swallowed the last light. The trees formed a ceiling, and once the sun dropped behind it, the clearing felt like a bowl filled with shadow. We added more wood to the fire. The flames rose. Higher, the darkness stayed. Same. The first truly unsettling thing happened so quietly it almost didn't register. Smell drifted into the clearing. Not smoke, not pine, something cold, like wet stone, like air from a basement that hasn't been opened in years. I noticed it and assumed it was the fire stirring something up from the ground. Then I saw Lilano, not Leela. That was the second story. Then I saw Maya wrinkle her nose. "You smell that?" she asked. Jared nodded without looking away from the trees. "It wasn't here earlier," he said. "We told ourselves it was the wind, except the wind still wasn't moving." Later, when the fire settled into a steady burn, we heard the first sound that didn't belong. It came from the edge of the clearing, a soft, rhythmic tap, not loud, not sharp, almost like someone touching wood with a fingernail. Tap, 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 tap. We all turned our heads at the same time, staring toward the same stretch of darkness. Between two trees, the tapping stopped. We waited. Nothing else came. "Probably an animal," Maya whispered. I wanted to agree, but the sound hadn't been in the brush. It hadn't been scattered or random the way animals sound at night. It had been measured, like a signal. Jared stood up again, this time holding his flashlight. He clicked it on and aimed it into the trees. The beam cut a bright line through the darkness, illuminating bark, low branches, and the pale dust of the ground. Nothing moved. No eyes reflected back. No shape fled from the light. The forest looked staged to still, like a photograph. Jared swept the beams slowly left and right, then stopped. "What?" I asked. He didn't answer. He lowered the flashlight slightly, then raised it again, as if confirming what he'd seen. "Finally," he said, "thought I saw something." "What kind of something?" Jared swallowed. "Just movement. We should have packed up then. We didn't, because leaving at night felt worse than staying. We were far from the road. The campground entrance was back through a long stretch of trees. The idea of walking through that silence to reach our car then, driving out through an empty campground, made my chest tighten, so we stayed. We made another reasonable decision. We told ourselves we'd sleep, wake up early, and leave at first light. That's what people always say. We put the fire out slowly, pouring water over it and watching the steam rise. The hiss sounded too loud. Every small noise felt like a flare shot into the night. We cleaned quickly. We didn't leave food out. We didn't leave bags open. We moved like we were being watched, even though none of us said it out loud. When we finally crawled into our tents, the clearing went dark in an instant. The firelight vanished, and the space beyond the tent walls suddenly felt enormous. Inside the tent, every sound became personal. Breathing, fabric shifting, a zipper moving an inch. I lay on my back, staring up at the dark ceiling, listening for something I couldn't name. I heard Jared whisper from the tent beside mine, "Are you awake?" "Yeah," I whispered back. A pause. "You think this place is closed?" "I don't know." Another pause. Then Jared said something so quietly I almost didn't catch it. "I think we're at the only site they keep open." My throat tightened. Why would they do that? Jared didn't answer. The silence pressed closer as the minutes passed, and then softly came the tapping again. Not on a tree, not in the brush, on something closer, a tent stake maybe, or a cooler, or the metal leg of the picnic table. Tap, 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 tap. It moved around the clearing, slow and patient, like someone walking the perimeter without making footsteps. I held my breath. I waited for an animal sound. There wasn't one at some point. My eyes drifted toward the thin mesh window of the tent. I couldn't see much outside, only darkness and faint shapes. But I felt it, that pressure of attention, the unmistakable sensation that something was standing just beyond the tent, close enough that if I reached out, my hand would meet air that wasn't empty. I did not move. I did not speak. I stared at the darkness until my eyes watered. Then I heard Jared again, barely audible. "Don't look," he whispered. My stomach dropped, because that meant he felt it too, and that's when I understood what the campsite was. It wasn't a better spot. It wasn't more space. It wasn't farther from the road for comfort. It was a clearing built for visibility, a place where you could be seen from every angle, a place the forest could surround without effort, a place that felt maintained not for campers, but for whatever came to check if you were still there. The tapping didn't stop when we closed our eyes. That was the first thing I realized. It didn't grow louder. It didn't speed up. It didn't announce itself. It simply continued, low, deliberate, and patient, like something marking time. Tap, dot, tap, tap, dot, tap. I couldn't tell where it was coming from anymore. At first, it had sounded like it was moving around the clearing, circling just beyond the firelight. Now, inside the tent, the sound felt closer and farther at the same time, like it wasn't bound to a single point. Every few seconds, the fabric of my tent shifted slightly as the night air cooled. Each movement made my muscles tense, waiting for something else to follow. Nothing did, just the tapping. I counted them at first, not intentionally. It just happened. Tap, tap. There was no pattern I could settle on. Sometimes the pauses were longer, sometimes shorter. It felt like whoever or whatever was making the sound was adjusting based on something we were doing or not doing from the tent beside mine. I heard a soft rustle, Maya shifting in her sleeping bag. Then her voice, barely above breath, "Is that an animal?" I didn't answer, not because I didn't want to, but because the moment she spoke, the tapping stopped instantly, like a switch flipped off. The silence that followed was worse. It wasn't relief, it was expectation. Seconds passed, then a different sound reached us. Footsteps, not heavy, not heavy, not fast, measured, each step placed carefully, like someone walking in unfamiliar terrain but trying not to be. Heard crunch, dot, pause, dot, crunch, dot. I squeezed my eyes shut. Wasn't how animals moved. Animals didn't pause mid-step to listen. Jared whispered from his tent, "Do not unzip." I hadn't realized my hand was already on the zipper. I froze. The footsteps circled the clearing slowly, not crashing through brush, not disturbing leaves. They stayed on the dirt, on the cleared ground, following the perimeter where the forest ended and our campsite began, like something respecting a boundary. Tried to tell myself it was another camper, someone who'd arrived late, someone looking for a sight. But no flashlight clicked on, no voice called out, no gear clinked or RST led. The steps stopped. Near the picnic table, I could feel it, not hear it, feel it. That sense of someone standing close, enough to change the air. Then came a sound that made my skin crawl. Dot, breathing, not labored, not heavy, dot, controlled. Slow breaths, drawn in through the nose and released softly through the mouth, too quiet to be accidental, too intentional to be human. Maya let out a small, involuntary whimper. The breathing stopped. The footsteps resumed, moved away from her tent, toward mine. I felt the ground vibrate faintly. With each step, the sound grew closer. The darkness outside my tent felt thicker, heavier, like it was pressing inward. I held my breath. Didn't move. I didn't think. The footsteps stopped right outside my tent, close enough that I could have reached out and touched whatever was there if I'd been brave enough to try. WASN single quotes. Nothing happened. No tug on the fabric. No knock. No whisper. Just presence. Seconds stretched into minutes. My legs began to ache from tension. Sweat gathered at my temples despite the cold. Then, softly, from just beyond the tent wall, a sound that didn't belong in the woods at all. My name, not spoken, clearly not shouted, just enough shape to it that I recognized it, like someone trying out the sound, testing it. I didn't respond. I didn't even swallow. I stayed perfectly still. From the other tents, I heard the same reaction, sharp intakes of breath, a muffled sob, someone whispering. No, the voice didn't repeat my name. It moved on. I could hear it drifting through the clearing, stopping briefly near each tent, trying sounds, testing syllables, learning, then dash. Just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. No footsteps, no breathing, no voice. The forest returned to silence. Not normal. Silence. Something heavier. Satisfied minutes. Passed, then more. No one moved. No one spoke. We waited for a signal that it was safe. None came. Finally, Jared whispered, Did it say your name too? I swallowed hard. Yes, I said. Maya whispered. It said mine wrong. That detail terrified me more than anything else, because it meant something was listening and correcting itself. Asterisk. No one slept after that. We lay there, trapped inside thin layers of fabric, listening to the forest relearn how to be quiet. The silence that followed wasn't natural. It wasn't the calm absence of sound, it was restraint. Like the woods were holding their breath along with us. I kept expecting the footsteps to return. They didn't. Instead, something worse happened. The forest began to make normal sounds again, one by one, carefully. A branch creaked somewhere to the left, far away. Then another sound answered it slightly closer. An insect chirped. Once dot stopped, chirped again, too evenly. Spaced, Jared whispered. Is it leaving? No one replied, because if we acknowledged it, it might decide to stay. The sounds continued to layer themselves back into place, like a bad imitation of a forest waking up. Wind brushed the tops of trees, but not the lower branches. Leaves rustled, but never close to the tents. Everything stayed, just out of reach. That was when we noticed something else. The sounds weren't random. They were moving, not rushing, drifting, circling the campsite in a slow, deliberate loop. Always at the same distance, always just far enough that we couldn't pinpoint a source. Maya shifted slightly in her tent the moment the fabric moved. The forest went quiet again. Instantly, every sound shut off at once. She froze. We all did. Seconds passed. Then very carefully the forest resumed its imitation, not exactly where it had left off. adjusted as if something had taken note of what caused the interruption. That's when the rule began to form in my mind. Not spoken, not agreed upon, understood movement. Draws attention. I felt it more than I reasoned it. Every instinct screamed the same warning. Don't move. Don't speak. Don't respond. At some point, minutes or hours later, heard footsteps again, but not in the clearing. Further out, beyond the trees. Multiple sets not walking together, spacing themselves evenly apart. Jared whispered, "There's more than one." I hated that he said it, because it confirmed what my body already knew. The steps didn't approach the campsite this time. They stayed beyond the tree line, pacing, listening, waiting. Then came the voices, not words, not names, sounds. Fragments, bits of speech pulled from earlier conversations. A laugh that almost sounded like Jared's. Sigh that might have been Maya's. A tone that reminded me of my own voice, but flattened. Stripped of emotion. They weren't trying to scare us. They were practicing. I pressed my face into my sleeping bag to muffle my breathing. My heart hammered so hard I was sure it would give us away. And then, just like before, the sounds stopped. The forest didn't reset this time. It stayed empty, hollow. A long stretch passed, long enough that my limbs went numb, long enough that fear began to shift into something worse. Anticipation. Finally, Jared spoke again, so quietly it barely registered. I think they want us to answer." My stomach dropped. Before anyone could respond, something happened near the edge of the clearing. A slow, deliberate crunch, not footsteps. Weight settling. Then another dot closer. Whatever rule we'd begun to understand had just been tested, and we had failed something without knowing what. I felt the ground vibrate faintly as the presence returned to the campsite. Not hurried, not angry, confident. The breathing came again, but this time it was wrong, too synchronized, too steady, as if more than one set of lungs were sharing the same rhythm. Then, softly to softly came a voice, clearer than before, closer than before. "Come out." No name this time, just an instruction. My chest tightened. Thought of the ranger, farthest from the road. Better spot, come back before dark. The truth hit me all at once. This wasn't a campsite people avoided. It was a campsite people were placed in. The breathing stopped. The presence lingered. Then, slowly it backed away, not leaving, repositioning. The forest remained silent for the rest of the night. But none of us mistook that silence for safety, because now we understood the rule. Not fully, but enough. If you respond, you're invited. If you move, you're noticed. If you leave the tent. The thought stopped there. None of us were willing to finish it. When the first hint of grey finally crept into the sky hours later, no one celebrated, because the night hadn't ended. It had paused, and whatever had been circling us had learned our voices. Morning didn't arrive the way it should have. There was no gradual lightening of the sky, no birds announcing the day, no sense of relief that comes with surviving a long night outdoors. Instead, there was only a thinning of darkness. The black around the tents faded into grey, then into a dull, colourless haze that made the forest look flat and distant, like a backdrop instead of a place. None of us moved right away. We waited. I checked my phone inside the tent. No signal. No notifications. The battery had dropped far more than it should have overnight. The time read 6:12. A.M. It didn't feel like morning. Jared's voice came softly through the tent wall. Is anyone else still here? It took me a second to understand what he meant. Yes, I said. I'm here. Maya answered next, then the fourth voice alike. Last, all four of us, present, breathing. We unzipped our tents slowly, not all at once, one by one, like we were afraid of triggering something if we moved too quickly. The campsite looked unchanged to unchanged. The fire pit was cold. The picnic table stood exactly where it had the night before. Our packs were untouched. No footprints in the dirt, no disturbed leaves. Nothing to suggest anything had been there at all. That doesn't make sense, Maya said quietly. She was right. If something had walked around our campsite all night, if it had stood near the tents, there should have been some sin. There wasn't. We didn't talk much as we moved. We ate cold snacks instead of cooking. No one suggested lighting the fire again. The idea of bringing light back into the clearing felt wrong now, like it would draw attention we hadn't shaken yet. Let's just pack up, Jared said. Leave early. No one argued as we packed. I felt it again, that pressure, that sense of being observed, not close, not right on top of us, but nearby. I looked toward the tree line. The forest stood perfectly. Still, no wind, no movement, just rows of trunks, disappearing into shadow. Do you see that? Eli asked. He was staring at the edge of the clearing, near where the trees were thickest. See what? He hesitated. Never mind, he said. I thought he didn't finish the sentence. We loaded the car quickly, too quickly. Our movements felt clumsy, rushed, like we were trying to beat an invisible clock. I was the last to shut the trunk. That's when I saw it. Not clearly, not all at once, just enough at the far edge of the clearing. Beyond where the firelight had reached the night before, something stood between the trees. It wasn't moving, it wasn't hiding, it was simply there at first. My brain refused to give it shape. It registered as a distortion, a wrongness in the spacing between trunks. Like one shadow didn't align with the others. I blinked, it remained. I didn't point, I didn't speak, I just watched. The longer I looked, the more my mind tried to define it and failed. It was roughly human in height, too still to be an animal, too thin in places, too tall in others. I felt Jared step up beside me. Don't stare, he whispered. My stomach dropped. You see it too? He nodded. Maya joined us, then Eli. None of us spoke. We stood there in a loose line, staring at the same empty space where something stood without. Needing to move, it didn't approach. It didn't retreat. It didn't react to being seen. That was the worst part. A thought crept into my mind. Unwanted and cold. It's been standing there longer than we've been awake. I took a step back. The moment my foot shifted, the pressure in the air changed. Not dramatically, just enough. The shape leaned, not stepping forward, tilting like it was adjusting its angle of observation. Get in the car, Jared said. This time, it wasn't a whisper. We didn't run. We didn't shout. We moved quickly but carefully. like sudden motion might provoke something we didn't understand. Doors opened, doors shut, seatbelts clicked, the engine turned over as the car started. I glanced back through the windshield. The shape was gone, not retreating, not fading, simply absent. But the forest didn't feel empty. We pulled out of the campsite, gravel crunching beneath the tires, and headed back down the narrow road. No one spoke, not because we didn't know what to say, because we all knew exactly what we'd seen as the campsite disappeared behind us. I noticed something that made my hands shake in the rearview mirror. The trees looked closer than they should have been, like the forest was leaning in, watching us leave. Asterisk. We didn't stop driving until the trees began to thin. Not because we felt safe, because the road finally forced us to slow down. The gravel narrowed into a single-lane path, twisting sharply downhill, and Jared had to ease off the accelerator to avoid skidding. Only then did anyone speak. I don't think it followed us. Maya said. Her voice sounded strange, flat, like she was afraid to put emotion into it. No, Jared replied. I think it let us go. No one argued with that either. We reached the main campground road and turned toward the exit. The ranger station came into view through the trees, its porch lights still glowing faintly even though the sun was fully up now. The building looked unchanged. Unchanged. Jared slowed the car. Should we tell him? Eli asked. Tell him what? Jared said. That something stood in the trees and watched us pack. That wasn't sarcasm. It was resignation. We pulled into the lot. Anyway, the ranger was there, standing in the same spot as before, facing the road. He didn't look surprised to see us. That's what I noticed first. No raised eyebrows. No greeting. No curiosity. Just a small nod. Morning, he said. Jared got out of the car. We're leaving early, he said. The ranger glanced past him, toward the back seat, then toward the forest behind us. You make it through the night? He asked. That phrasing hit hard. Not how was your stay? Not everything okay? Make it through, yes, Jared said. But something. The ranger raised a hand, just slightly enough to stop the sentence. You didn't leave your tent after dark, he said. It wasn't a question. Jared hesitated. No. The ranger nodded again. That's good. Maya leaned forward from the back seat. There was something in the woods this morning, she said. It was watching us. The ranger didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it either. He just studied the tree line for a long moment, then looked back at us. Did you all see it? He asked. Yes, I said. He paused, then asked, all four of you? We all nodded. The ranger exhaled slowly. Then it didn't miscount, he said. The words sent a chill through me. Miscount? Eli asked. The ranger folded his arms. Sometimes, he said, people hear things out there, see things, think there's more or less than there really are. He met my eyes. That's when problems start. My chest tightened. What kind of problems? The ranger didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to a wooden sign near the edge of the lot. It listed campground rules: fires, litter, wildlife safety. He tapped the bottom edge with his finger. There used to be a rule down there, he said. Didn't put it back after the last update. What rule? Maya asked. The ranger hesitated, then said, never leave your tent after dark. Jared swallowed. That's not a normal rule. No, the ranger agreed. It's not. He turned back to us. Did it say anything to you? No one answered immediately. I thought of my name, shaped wrong in the dark. Yes, I said. It tried. The ranger nodded once. Then you're lucky, he said. It didn't get the chance to practice. I felt dizzy. Practice what? He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the map pinned to the side of the station. You were at Site 14, he said. Double quotes, yes. That site's used when others aren't, he continued. Keeps things predictable. Predictable for who? Eli asked. The ranger finally looked tired. For us, he said. And for them, my mouth went dry. How long has this been happening? Maya asked. The ranger considered that. Longer than I've worked here, he said. Longer than the current maps. Jared frowned. Why keep the campground open at all? The ranger met his gaze. Because when people stop coming, he said, they start looking. Silence fell over the lot. Not the same silence as the forest, but close. The ranger stepped back toward the station. You did the right things, he said. You stayed put. You didn't answer. You didn't add confusion. Confusion? I asked. He paused at the door. When something thinks there's more of you than there really are, he said quietly. It tries to fix that. The door closed behind him. The porch light clicked off. We sat in the car for a long moment after that. No one spoke, no one moved. Finally, Jared turned the key as we drove away. I glanced one last time into the forest beyond the station. Between the trees, deep in shadow. Something shifted. Not following, not approaching, just adjusting. Later, hours later, when the highway finally swallowed the forest and normal sounds returned, we tried to talk about what had happened. We failed. Words didn't fit, but one detail stayed with me. Something the ranger had said. It didn't miscount because that meant something else, something far worse. It meant whatever was watching us that night had already known exactly how many of us there were. We didn't talk about what the ranger said while we drove, not because we didn't want to, but because every attempt stalled before it became sound. Each of us seemed to be replaying the same moments in our heads, trying to reassemble them into something that made sense. It didn't miscount. The words followed us long after the trees fell away behind the car. We stopped at a gas station an hour later. Bright lights, people talking, engines starting and stopping, normal sounds, normal movement, the kind of place that should have reset everything. It didn't sing quotes. Inside the store, Jared stood too close to the counter. Maya kept glancing at the door. Eli wandered the aisles but never let the others out of his sight. I noticed something about myself that scared me more than the night before. I was counting every time someone walked past us. My eyes tracked them until they left the building, making sure the number didn't change. We finally talked in the car, not all at once, in fragments. So there really was a rule, Maya said. Jared nodded. He didn't invent that. No, I said. He remembered it. We tried to reconstruct the night step by step, the tapping, the footsteps, the voices. What had changed when we moved? What had stopped when we spoke? That thing didn't want us to leave the tents. Eli said. No, Jared replied. It wanted us to come out. The realization settled heavily. The ranger hadn't warned us about danger. He had warned us about Interaction. We pulled over at a rest stop farther down the highway. Daylight was stronger here. The sun had climbed high enough to burn away the fog, and the forest felt less oppressive, more like a backdrop than a presence. Even so, none of us strayed far from the car. That campsite wasn't random, Maya said. No, I agreed. It was designed. We remembered how clean it had been, how evenly spaced the trees were, how open the clearing felt. Not a campsite shaped by convenience, one shaped by observation. Site 14. Jared said quietly. Farthest from the road. I nodded. A place where leaving takes effort, I said. And staying still is easier. The rule made sense now. Never leave the tent after dark, because once you did, you changed the count. I remembered the breathing outside. My tent, too synchronized, too measured. Not one thing, several. They weren't waiting for night, Eli said. They were waiting for a mistake. That was when we realized something else. We'd been lucky, not because nothing happened, but because no one broke the rule. Jared stared out the windshield. What if someone had? No one answered. We drove the rest of the way home in silence, but the conversation didn't end. There, it followed us into the following weeks, into sleepless nights, into moments where the dark felt more intentional than it should. I started waking up around the same time every night. Not gasping, not panicked, just alert, as if something expected me to be awake. One night, I dreamed I was back at the campsite, standing just outside my tent, hearing my own voice, calling my name from the trees. I woke up, drenched in sweat, and realized something that made my stomach turn. The dream hadn't started with fear. It had started with curiosity. That's when the rule stopped being about the campsite. It became about behavior. Never leave the tent after dark. Never respond. Never let the number change. Because once you step outside, you stop being accounted for. Asterisk, it wasn't one of us who broke the rule. That's the detail that still haunts me, because it means intention didn't matter. A week after we got home, Jared called me late at night. He didn't say hello. He didn't explain. He just asked, "Are you alone right now?" I said yes. "Good," he replied. "Listen carefully." He told me he'd gone camping again, not at the same place, not even in the same state. A different forest, a familiar campground, one he'd been to dozens of times before. He said he hadn't planned to stay the night. He said he just wanted to prove something to himself. I needed to know it was just that place, he said. His voice sounded hollow, like he'd already accepted an answer he didn't want. That night, he slept in his tent. Nothing happened at first. No tapping, no footsteps, no voices, just a normal forest, until he woke up to someone screaming. Words, just panic, close. Too close. He unzipped the tent without thinking. That was the mistake. Outside, he saw a woman running through the campsite, barefoot, disoriented, not part of his group. She wasn't running away from anything. She was running toward the tents, toward light, toward people. Jared called out to her. She didn't respond. She ran past his campsite and disappeared into the trees. That's when the forest went quiet. Instantly, Jared realized something was wrong, not because of the silence, but because of the feeling, that familiar pressure, the sense of being observed, measured. He zipped the tent shut too late. From outside, he heard movement, multiple sets of footsteps, not chasing, positioning. Then he heard the woman again, but her voice had changed. She was calling names now, not Jared's, different ones, repeating them carefully, trying to shape them correctly. Jared stayed silent. He didn't move. He didn't answer. He waited for the sounds to pass. They didn single quotes. Eventually, the woman's voice stopped. The footsteps lingered, then dashed slowly. They moved away, not gone. Repositioned. Jared stayed in his tent until sunrise. He didn't sleep in the morning. He found footprints, not animal, not human, too evenly spaced out, too deliberate. They circled his tent. Stopped, moved on. He found the woman's campsite. Later that morning, her tent was still standing, her belongings untouched. No sign of struggle, no sign she'd returned. Rangers said she'd panicked, wandered off, got lost. They'd search. They always say that. Jared didn't stay to hear the rest. He packed up and left. That was when he called me. She didn't know the rule, he said quietly, and neither did I. I didn't know what to say. There was nothing to say. The rule wasn't about intention. It was about behavior. Once you leave the tent after dark, you change the count. That's when I understood the final part of the ranger's warning. When something thinks there's more of you than there really are, it tries to fix that. The woman didn't disappear because she was taken. She disappeared because she stopped being counted correctly. Jared never camped again. Neither did I. Sometimes, late at night, when I hear a sound outside my window, footsteps on gravel, or a voice drifting from somewhere it shouldn't, think about that. Clearing, about sight. 14, about how carefully it was designed, and I wonder how many other places exist like it. Places where the rules aren't posted. Places where the forest doesn't hunt. It corrects. After Jared told me what happened, I stopped sleeping normally. Not immediately at first. It was subtle, waking up once or twice a night, checking the clock, rolling over, convincing myself I'd imagined the sound that pulled me out of sleep. But then the pattern set in. Every night, I woke up at the same time, 2:17 a.m. I didn't choose to notice it. My body did, the moment my eyes opened. I knew what time it would be before I even looked. The room would feel wrong, too still, like the air had been paused. Outside, the neighborhood would be silent in a way that didn't match the hour. No cars passing, no distant voices, no dogs barking, just emptiness. At first I stayed in bed. I told myself it was stress, residual fear, the kind of thing that happens after a traumatic experience. But the silence wasn't inside my head. It was outside my walls. One night, I finally checked my phone. The screen lit up instantly, too bright in the dark. 2:17 a.m. No notifications, no missed calls, no reason to be awake. I lay there listening. That's when I noticed something else. Time felt stretched. The seconds between breaths felt longer than they should have. My heartbeat seemed slower, heavier, like it was echoing in a larger space. I closed my eyes, opened them again. The time hadn't changed. The next morning, I called Maya. She answered on the second ring. Don't tell me, she said. You too? I asked. 217. She replied. She described the same thing, the silence, the stillness, the feeling that the night had stopped, progressing like dawn was being held just out of reach. Eli experienced it as well. So did Jared, for different places, for different states, same hour. That wasn't just one night, Jared said during our call. That was practice. None of us laughed as the days passed. The waking didn't stop. It became easier, almost expected. I'd open my eyes and wait for the quiet to settle, like a tide pulling back. Then I'd listen. Sometimes I thought I heard movement, not footsteps, something softer, like weight shifting. On the ground outside, I never looked. Out the window, I didn't need to. I knew better. One night, I made a mistake. Not a big one, just a small shift. I sat up in bed the moment I did. The silence outside sharpened, not louder, focused, like something had adjusted its attention. My phone buzzed. I nearly dropped it. A text from Jared. Are you awake? I stared at the screen. I didn't reply. Another buzz. Don't answer anything tonight, I typed back slowly. Did you hear something? The reply came instantly. No, that's the problem. I lay back down, heart pounding. Outside the streetlight at the end of my block flickered once, then went dark. I checked the clock. Again, still 2:17 a.m. Minutes passed. Then more. I closed my eyes, opened them. The time didn't change. That's when I realized something that made my throat go dry. The night wasn't repeating. It wasn't RESETT. It was lingering at some point. I felt the same pressure I'd felt at the campsite. Not close, not right outside, but nearby. As if something had found the edge of where I was allowed to exist, and stopped there. I stayed, perfectly still. I didn't breathe deeply. Didn't check the time again, eventually dash slowly there. Pressure eased, the silence loosened, and the night resumed its normal rhythm when morning finally came. It felt earned, not natural. I didn't go outside that day. Neither did any of us. We stayed where we were, grounded in familiar spaces, pretending the world hadn't changed, but we all knew the truth. The night from the campsite hadn't ended it, had followed us, not physically, behaviorally, whatever. Learned our voices in the forest hadn't stopped. Listening, it had simply changed the setting. Asterisk, after the third week, we stopped calling it coincidence. The pattern was too precise, too consistent, every night. No matter where we were, no matter what we did during the day, the same thing happened. To 17 a.m. we tried changing our routines, going to bed earlier, staying up later, sleeping with lights on, sleeping with the television, running. None of it mattered. Sleep didn't end naturally. Anymore, it was interrupted. Eli tried medication. He said it helped him fall asleep faster. It didn't help him stay asleep. He still woke up at 2:17. Only now he woke up, confused, disoriented, with the sense that time had skipped instead of flowed. That feels worse, he admitted. Maya stopped sleeping in her bedroom altogether. She moved to the living room, then the couch, then the floor, trying to find a place where the silence felt less focused. It doesn't matter where I am, she said during one call. It knows when I'm awake. That sentence lingered with me. It knows. One night, I tested something, not because I was brave, because exhaustion makes you careless. At 2:16 a.m., I turned on the bedroom light. I sat upright in bed and waited. The room felt exposed. Immediately, like I'd stepped onto a stage. 2:17 arrived. The light didn't flicker, the clock didn't glitch, but the silence outside deepened, compressed. I heard something then. Not footsteps, distance. The sound you get when something is far away but moving toward you without sound. A pressure in the air. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Turn the light off. I didn't reply. Reached for the lamp and switched it off. The pressure eased, not vanished, relaxed, like a muscle. Unseal. NCHING. The next night, Jared tried something else. He went outside. He called me the next morning, voice shaking. I just needed to know if it was still there, he said. He'd stepped onto his porch at 2:17. Barefoot, the night air cold against his skin. The street had been empty, every house dark, every window black. He said the silence outside had been absolute, not suburban quiet, not late night calm. Vacant. I felt like I was the only thing moving, he said, and that was wrong. He didn't stay out long. He went back inside before the minute changed, but something had already shifted that night. He didn't wake up at 2:17. He woke up earlier, 2:14, heart racing, certain he was late. That's when I understood. He said quietly, "It's not waiting for the time, it's waiting for us." The realization broke something open in all of us. The night wasn't repeating on a schedule, it was checking, confirming. Awareness, seeing who noticed. Time distortion wasn't the problem, attention was. After that, the nights became longer, not in hours, in sensation. Some nights I'd wake at 2:17 and feel like hours passed before the silence lifted. Other nights, it felt like only seconds, but the clock insisted otherwise. Once, I blinked and found it was 3:40, without remembering anything in between. That gap scared me more than the silence ever had. Eli called us one morning in tears. I dreamed I answered. He said, "I don't remember doing it. I just know I did." "What happened?" Maya asked. "I don't know," he said, but something was satisfied. After that, we stopped experimenting, stopped testing, stopped trying to understand. We did the only thing we knew had worked before. We followed the rule at night. When we woke at 2:17, we stayed still. We didn't turn on lights. We didn't check windows. We didn't respond to messages until morning, and slowly, very slowly, the pressure lessened, the nights shortened. The silence loosened its grip, but it never fully left. Even now, years later, there are nights when I wake suddenly, heart pounding, convinced I've missed something, convinced I've been counted incorrectly, because once something learns your presence, it doesn't forget. It just waits for another mistake. We didn't plan to meet again, not at first. After everything that happened, distance felt safer than connection. We stopped calling as often. Messages became shorter. Updates turned into acknowledgements. We were all trying the same thing, to live like nothing had followed us home. For a while, it almost worked. The nights grew quieter. The waking at 2:17 became less frequent. Weeks passed without the heavy silence pressing in on our rooms. Normal life crept back in, and with it, a dangerous idea. Maybe it had been tied to that place. Maybe leaving had been enough. The first crack in that belief came from Eli. He sent a message to the group. Chat late one evening. Does anyone else feel like they're being checked again? I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Maya replied a minute later. I didn't want to say anything. Jared didn't respond at all. That night, I woke without checking the time. I didn't need to. The silence told me everything. It felt different this time. Not exploratory, not curious, familiar, like something revisiting. A known location. I lay perfectly still, staring at the ceiling, replaying the ranger's words in my head. It didn't miscount. The realization settled slowly, painfully. We had never been escaping. We had been dispersing. When you scatter something that hunts patterns, you don't confuse it. You give it more data the next morning. Jared called. His voice sounded steadier than I expected. I think we need to see each other, he said, in person. Why? I asked. Because whatever this is, he replied, it learned us as a group. We met a week later. Neutral place. Public. Busy. A roadside diner near a highway exit where trucks came and went constantly. Noise, movement, witnesses. Even there, we sat close. Old habits, old instincts. None of us mentioned the campsite at first. We talked about work, about family, about anything that kept the conversation grounded. But beneath it all was the same unspoken question. What happens if the count changes again? Maya broke first. I don't think it followed us, she said quietly. I think we brought the rule with us. Eli nodded. I still don't leave my bedroom at night, he admitted, even when I need to. Jared stared into his coffee. I don't answer my phone after dark, he said, even if it's ringing. We compared notes. The sensations, the timing, the moments of pressure that came and went. And one detail stood out. It only happened when we were alone, not physically, but unobserved. Busy streets, crowded places, noise and motion. Those spaces felt safe. Still, it doesn't like witnesses, Maya said. No, Jared corrected. It doesn't like variables. The campsite had been perfect, controlled, contained, predictable, double quotes. So what do we do? Eli asked. No one answered right away, because we all knew the truth. We couldn't go back to pretending. We couldn't keep shrinking our lives to avoid being noticed. And we couldn't rely on distance anymore. The only thing that had ever worked was structure, rules, boundaries. The ranger hadn't told us how to get rid of it. He'd told us how to live with it. Never change the count. Never, answered Dot. Never step outside when you're not supposed to exist. We made a decision then, not to run, not to confront, but to finish something we'd left incomplete. We were going back, not to the same campsite, but to the place where the rule had been created, to understand it properly and make sure it stayed there. Asterisk, we didn't tell anyone where we were going. Not friends, not family, not co-workers. Some instinct told us that explanation itself was a form of invitation. We met at the edge of the forest just after sunrise. The same forest, not the same road, not the same entrance, but close enough that the air felt familiar the moment. We stepped out of the cars. The trees looked ordinary. That was the lie they always told best. We stood there for a moment, counting. 4 of us, same as before, same order, No confusion before dark. Maya said quietly. We nodded. The trail we followed wasn't marked on any map. Jared had found it by accident weeks earlier, scrolling through outdated satellite images and old ranger logs posted on a forgotten forum. A maintenance trail, an access route, something meant to be temporary, like the campsite. The deeper we went, the quieter it became, not immediately, gradually, as if the forest was deciding whether to acknowledge us. We reached the clearing just after noon. Not Site 14. Something older, smaller. No fire ring. No picnic table, just a circular space where the trees stood farther apart than they should have. The ground was worn smooth, pressed flat over time. This is where it started, Jared said. He didn't explain how he knew. He didn't need to. The pressure returned. Instantly, not heavy, not threatening. Attentive, we stayed inside the circle. No one crossed the boundary. We stood close enough that our shoulders nearly touched for shapes. One count, we don't answer, Eli said. We don't move, Maya added. And we leave before dark. I finished. The forest responded. Not with sound, with absence. The minutes stretched. The sun moved. Shadows shifted slowly around us, but never crossed the center of the clearing. Like something was holding them back. Then dash, softly dash. The voices came, not from the trees, from the edge of hearing. Fragments, our names, spoken, almost correctly. I felt the urge to answer rise in my chest. Not fear, recognition. I stayed silent. We all did. The voices grew closer, clearer, more confident. They circled the clearing but never stepped inside. That was when I understood. The rule hadn't been created to trap it. It had been created to contain it. The campsite wasn't bait. It was a boundary lesson. A place to teach people where they ended and where it began. As the sun dipped lower, the pressure intensified. Not angry, urgent, like something running out of time. Then the voices stopped. The silence deepened. And for the first time since the campsite, I felt something else. Frustration. We didn't wait. We didn't test it. We left together, slowly, carefully, never breaking formation, never changing the count. The forest watched us go, not following, not retreating, just observing. We reached the trailhead before sunset. The moment we stepped into open light, the pressure lifted, not gone, withdrawn. We didn't speak until we were back in our cars. Maya finally exhaled. I think it worked, she said. Jared shook his head. I think it remembered, he replied. We went our separate ways after that, for real this time. No promises, no plans, just understanding. Years have passed. The nights are mostly quiet now. Mostly, but sometimes, very rarely wake up and feel that familiar stillness settle over the world. The sense of being counted, measured, confirmed. I don't move, I don't answer, I don't step outside, because I know the truth now. Whatever was in those woods didn't follow us. It never needed to. It learned the rule, and it's patient enough to wait for the next place someone forgets it. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Terramouth.